Rain hit the cracked pavement like a thousand tiny fists. The sound echoed through the alley, blending with the hum of distant traffic. A little girl, maybe 8, stumbled out from behind a dumpster, barefoot, her cheeks streaked with tears and mud. Her voice trembled as she shouted into the storm, "Please, somebody help. They're hurting my mama." A group of bikers, leather jackets glistening under the flickering streetlight, turned their heads. Engines still rumbling, the men exchanged glances, confusion, hesitation, then something else. The leader, a broad man with tattoos that told their own stories, swung his leg off the bike. "Where is she, kid?" he asked softly. The girl pointed toward a small apartment across the street. A window was shattered. Light flickered inside. The man nodded once, and the world seemed to slow. The rain, the thunder, the distant cries, everything faded into the roar of boots hitting wet asphalt. As they ran toward danger, "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." The apartment door was half open, splintered near the lock. Inside, chaos breathed in every corner. Furniture overturned. A lamp flickered on its side. A man, drunk, furious, had his hand raised again. And there, shielding herself with trembling arms, was the woman the little girl had cried for. "Hey!" The biker's voice boomed like thunder as he stepped into the room. The man turned, startled, eyes wild. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who doesn't stand by." Before another word could be said, the drunk swung a bottle. It shattered midair, caught by another biker, glass scattering across the floor. The woman gasped, frozen between fear and disbelief. "Get her out," the leader ordered. Two bikers moved quickly, guiding the woman and child outside, wrapping the girl in a leather jacket 3 sizes too big. She clung to the sleeve like it was safety itself. The man stumbled, tried to push past them, but one glare from the leader froze him in place. "You touch them again," he said quietly, "and you'll answer to all of us." By the time the police arrived, called by a neighbor, the bikers were already back on their motorcycles, engines humming like a heartbeat against the storm. The woman, holding her daughter close, stepped forward. "Wait," she called out, her voice cracking. "Who are you?" The leader smiled faintly beneath his helmet. "Just people who were nearby." Then they disappeared into the rain. Later that night, the woman sat on the steps of her apartment, wrapped in a blanket. Her daughter slept beside her, head resting on her lap. For the first time in months, there was silence, no shouting, no breaking glass. Just rain and the faint echo of engines fading into the night. She whispered to no one in particular, "Thank you. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest, comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters." Morning came with gray light. The street still smelled of wet asphalt and smoke. A police officer stood near the doorway, talking gently to the woman. "We'll keep him in custody," he said. "You're safe now." She nodded, though her eyes said she wasn't sure she'd ever truly feel safe again. Down the block, a small diner buzzed with the sound of clinking cups and old rock on the radio. The same group of bikers sat in a corner booth, steam rising from their coffee, silence heavy between them. One of them, a younger man with tired eyes, broke the quiet. "Boss, we're not cops. We can't keep stepping in like this." The leader looked at him, then out the window toward the gray sky. "If not us," he said softly, "then who?" The others said nothing, but one by one, their hands went up to their cups, a quiet agreement sealed with a sip later. When they left, the leader paused outside the diner. A memory tugged at him, a voice from years ago, smaller, shaking. "They're hurting my mama." Only that time, no one had come. He took a deep breath, then slipped his helmet on. "Let's ride." They didn't know it yet, but that single act, one child's desperate plea and a few men who listened, would ripple farther than any of them. Imagine the road stretched endless beneath the pale morning light. Tires hissed over puddles, and the wind whipped through the spaces between them like it carried all the things they couldn't say. The bikers rode in silence, 5 of them, the leader in front, his jacket marked with a faded emblem that read the Iron Mercy. He didn't name the group. The name came from people who'd seen them once, stepping in where others turned away, helping without asking. But to the men themselves, it wasn't a club. It was penance. They pulled over at a rest stop outside town. Steam rose from the engines as they parked. The youngest biker, Caleb, ran a hand through his soaked hair. She looked scared. Man. The kid too, the leader, known simply as Mason, nodded. They'll remember we came. That's enough for now. Caleb frowned. You think she'll be okay? Mason's gaze drifted toward the horizon. If she believes someone cared, even for a minute, maybe she will. They didn't know that the woman, Lily, had been watching them leave that morning. Her hand had rested on her daughter's hair, still trembling from the night before. She didn't even know their names, just the sound of their engines. The blur of faces that had appeared out of nowhere when the world was falling apart. That afternoon, Lily took her daughter, Grace, to the community center. She needed a place to breathe, and Grace needed something, anything normal. The volunteers handed Grace crayons and paper. The girl sat by a window, drawing carefully. When Lily leaned over to see, her chest tightened. On the paper was a motorcycle, big, black, with a heart drawn on the gas tank, and beside it, a stick figure girl smiling. That's them, Grace said quietly. The Loud Angels. Lily smiled faintly, tears catching in her lashes. Yeah, she whispered. The Loud Angels. Across town, Mason parked his bike in front of a mechanic's garage. The others followed, the air thick with oil and the clatter of tools. Mason's wife, Ava, stepped out from behind the counter, wiping her hands on a rag. You did it again, didn't you? She said softly. Mason didn't answer. She sighed and walked closer, her tone gentler. You can't save everyone, Mason. He looked down, voice rough. I know, but I can try to save the ones I see. Ava hesitated, then touched his arm. Just make sure you don't lose yourself in the trying. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. The apartment was too quiet now, too different from the chaos she'd grown used to. She crept to the window, staring out at the wet street. Waiting for the sound of engines. She whispered to herself, come back, please. And somewhere miles away, on a dark stretch of highway, Mason felt something, a pull in his chest he couldn't name. He throttled the engine slightly, letting it echo louder into the night. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. The next morning, Lily went to the police station to sign papers. When she returned, she found a small envelope taped to her door. No name, no return address, just a single folded note inside. It read, you don't owe anyone your silence. Start again, and don't be afraid to ask for help. You're stronger than you think. Lily's hands trembled as she read it. She looked around, but the street was empty. Only the wind moved, carrying the faint scent of gasoline and rain. She smiled for the first time in a long while. Thank you, she whispered again. Then she tucked the note into her purse. A reminder that sometimes strangers arrive not to stay, but to remind you that goodness still exists miles away. Mason leaned on his handlebars at a red light, watching the city wake. He didn't know if the woman had read the note. He didn't need to. Some things didn't need endings, only beginnings that felt like mercy. And yet, fate wasn't done with any of them. Days turned into weeks. Lily found a small job at a bakery nearby, her hands steadying with the rhythm of kneading dough and the hum of early morning music. Grace started smiling again. Little by little, whenever she smelled fresh bread or saw her mother's flour-covered face. But sometimes, when the mixer went quiet or the sky turned gray, Lily's eyes drifted to the street outside. She wondered if she'd ever see those bikers again. The men who arrived like thunder and left without names, across town. The Iron Mercy gathered again, not for chaos, but for cause. Mason had pinned a new map on the wall of the garage. Red dots marked different neighborhoods, each representing a place where someone needed protection. A woman seeking shelter, a kid being bullied, a man down on luck. We're not just riders anymore, Mason said, his voice steady. We're watchers. The streets don't fix themselves, people do. Caleb looked at him, a rare grin tugging at his lips. You're talking about turning us into heroes. Mason shook his head. No, just men who refuse to walk away. Meanwhile, at the bakery, Lily's boss, an older woman named Mrs. Porter, handed her a newspaper. "Thought you might want to see this," she said with a wink. On the front page was a headline, "Unknown biker group saves homeless veteran from assault." The grainy photo showed Mason and the others, helmets on, standing beside a man wrapped in a blanket. Lily froze, her heart leaping. "It's them," she whispered. Mrs. Porter smiled knowingly. "Good men still ride these roads, honey. You and Grace were lucky they found you first." Lily didn't respond. She was already thinking of something. A letter, maybe. Something she could write and hope would find its way back to them. That night, she sat by the window again, pen trembling in her hand. Grace lay asleep on the couch, holding the same drawing of the biker with a heart on his tank. Lily began to write. "You don't know me, but you saved more than just a life that night. You gave a child her belief back. You gave a mother courage she'd forgotten she had." She folded the letter carefully, sealing it with nothing but hope. A week later, Mason found it tucked between the spokes of his bike's front wheel. No name, just a piece of paper wrapped in twine. He read it in silence while the others watched. When he finished, he didn't say a word, just tucked it into his jacket pocket and looked toward the horizon. "Another reason to keep writing," Caleb murmured. Mason nodded slowly. "Yeah, another reason." The wind carried the faint scent of rain again, the kind that washed the world clean, if only for a little while. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." That night, the Iron Mercy rode again. But this time, Mason didn't just follow the call of trouble. He followed a feeling. Something deep inside told him their paths would cross once more. On the other side of town, Lily walked Grace home from school. The sky was heavy with clouds. Grace kicked a pebble, smiling. "Mama, if I draw them again, do you think they'll see it?" Lily laughed softly. "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe the wind carries drawings too." They didn't see the motorcycle parked at the corner or the man leaning against it, helmet under his arm, watching quietly as they passed. Mason didn't approach. He didn't need to. Seeing them safe was enough. But when Grace turned, her head suddenly, maybe sensing something, their eyes met for half a second. Hers lit up with recognition. Mason smiled, a small nod that said everything words couldn't. And just like that, the engines roared again, fading into the distance, leaving behind nothing but warmth in the cold afternoon air. For days after that fleeting glance, Grace couldn't stop talking about the biker she'd seen. "He looked right at me, Mama," she said, eyes wide with that spark only children carry, the kind that believes in miracles. Hiding behind every corner, Lily smiled, pretending not to hope. Maybe he was just someone who looked like him. But deep down, something in her heart whispered otherwise. The world had a way of bringing souls back around, not always to stay, but to remind you you're not forgotten. That evening, rain drizzled again, softer this time, almost gentle. Mason and the crew rode through narrow city streets, their headlights cutting through mist. The roads were slick, the smell of wet asphalt sharp in the air. Caleb broke the silence through his helmet. "Mick, you ever think about her, the woman from that night?" Mason didn't answer right away. "Yeah," he finally said. "But not just her, the kid too. She reminded me of someone, your sister." Mason's jaw tightened. "Yeah, back before everything went bad." The others didn't press. They all had ghosts, after all. That was why they rode. The hum of engines was the only thing that ever drowned out regret. The next day, Lily found a small bouquet of wildflowers outside the bakery door, purple and white, tied with a strip of leather. No note, no explanation, just the faintest scent of gasoline beneath the rain. She stood frozen, heart thudding. Then, slowly, she smiled. Grace would love this. The air was colder now, sharper, the kind that made the city lights blur into a halo of gold and gray. Mason's phone buzzed against his vest pocket, breaking the silence. A message from one of the guys, emergency, downtown, something bad. He revved the bike, the sound splitting through the still night as the others joined one by one, engines howling like thunder rolling in. Whatever peace he'd found on that hill vanished beneath. The urgency in his chest, By the time they reached the narrow street downtown, red and blue lights painted the wet pavement. Smoke curled from a small apartment complex, flames licking the edges of the roof. Fire started from the second floor. A firefighter shouted, "We're trying to get everyone out," but one unit's still blocked in. Mason's gaze followed the firefighter's finger. Apartment to be. A familiar building. His stomach dropped. That was Lily's street. Before anyone could stop him, he was running toward the building. Caleb cursed and sprinted after him. "Mason, you can't just..." But Mason didn't hear. The world had narrowed to a single thought. Not them. Not again. Inside. Smoke clawed at his throat. Heat shimmered along the hallway walls. He kicked open doors, calling out names that weren't his. To know. Lily, Grace. A faint cough answered from behind the last door. He threw his shoulder into it, splintering it open. Lily was there, clutching Grace to her chest, both coughing. Faces streaked with soot. Grace's eyes widened. "You came back," Mason smiled through the haze. Voice hoarse. "Told you we watch out for our own." He wrapped his jacket around them and led them through the smoke, one arm shielding their heads, the other guiding the way. The ceiling creaked ominously above, fire devouring everything in its reach. They made it halfway down the hall before a beam crashed down, sparks exploding across the floor. Mason shoved them forward, pain slicing across his arm. "Go." Caleb appeared through the haze, grabbing Lily's arm. "Come on, this way, together." They stumbled out into the street, collapsing under the cold rain that had started again. Nature's mercy against man's disaster. Lily clung to Grace, both coughing and crying, while firefighters rushed to douse the flames. Mason sat against the curb, breathing hard, his sleeve torn, skin raw but alive. Grace crawled over, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "You came back," she whispered again, her voice muffled against his jacket. He held her tightly. "Always, be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." Hours later, the fire was out. Smoke lingered in the air like ghosts reluctant to leave. Lily sat beside Mason, a blanket around her shoulders, eyes red but calm. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. Mason gave a faint smile. "Didn't have to last time either." Lily looked down, tears glistening. "I don't understand people like you." He shrugged, wincing slightly. "Maybe we're just people who know what it feels like when no one comes." The fire truck lights flickered against their faces, fading one by one as the last responders packed up. Grace had fallen asleep on Lily's lap, clutching Mason's biker glove in her tiny hand like a treasure. For a long moment, no one spoke, just the steady rhythm of rain, washing ash from the street, from skin, from memory. Then Lily whispered, "You saved us again." Mason shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just showed up." She looked at him, really looked, through the grime, through the scars, into the kind of tired that comes from carrying too much good in a world too heavy for it. And for the first time, she believed that maybe heroes didn't wear capes or badges. Maybe they wore leather and carried their grief onto wheels, trying to make the world right one road at a time. When Grace saw the flowers that evening, she gasped, "Mama, it's them. It's the loud angels again." Lily knelt beside her, voice soft. "Maybe they're just reminding us they're still out there, sweetheart, still watching." Grace hugged the flowers close, like they were proof that magic was real. Meanwhile, across town, the Iron Mercy had stopped at a gas station. Mason leaned against his bike, looking at his reflection in the chrome tank. Ava's words echoed in his mind. "Don't lose yourself in the trying." He was starting to understand what she meant. Every time they stepped in, he carried the weight home, every story, every cry, every face. It was a heavy kind of hope. A small boy walked by, holding his mother's hand, staring in awe at the motorcycles. Mason smiled faintly and waved. The boy waved back, grinning so hard he tripped over his own shoe. The laughter that followed softened something in Mason's chest. Caleb glanced over. "You think what we do changes anything?" Mason looked at the boy again, then at the road stretching ahead. "Maybe not the world," he said quietly, "but maybe someone's world. If that moment hit you hard, leave a. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't." Night fell like a slow curtain. Lily put Grace to bed, tucking her in tight. She lingered by the window again, rain tapping softly against the glass. For the first time in a long while, she whispered a prayer, not for help, but for gratitude. Miles away, Mason parked his bike on an overlook outside the city. The lights below shimmered, like fireflies caught in glass. He reached into his jacket, pulling out Lily's old letter. The paper was worn now, creased at the folds. He read the words again. You gave a child her belief back. His throat tightened. Maybe she gave me mine too, he murmured. The wind picked up, brushing against his face like a memory. For a man who'd spent years running from his past, this quiet moment felt like redemption in motion. He didn't know it yet, but the road was about to test that belief harder than ever before. Asterisk. The sun rose pale and tired, slipping through the gray clouds like it didn't want to face what the night had done. The apartment was gone, a blackened skeleton surrounded by yellow tape. The scent of smoke clung to everything, even the air itself. Lily sat on the curb, her arm around Grace, staring at what used to be their home. A single tear rolled down her cheek before she could stop it. Mason stood a few feet away, silent, his arm bandaged from the burn. Caleb leaned on his bike, eyes heavy, when the paramedics finished checking Grace. The little girl tugged Mason's sleeve. You smell like fire, she said softly. He chuckled, voice hoarse. Guess that means I fought one. Grace smiled sleepily. You won. Mason's chest tightened at that. He wished victory felt that simple. Later that morning, Eve arrived with her pickup truck, worry written all over her face. She helped Lily and Grace load what little had survived, a half-burned teddy bear, a cracked photo frame, a single untouched Bible. You're coming with us, Eva said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. Lily hesitated. We don't want to intrude. Mason stepped forward, shaking his head. You're not intruding. You're staying until you figure things out. Grace's face lit up. With the loud angels? Eva laughed softly. Yeah, sweetheart. With the loud angels. That night, Mason's house smelled like home-cooked stew and engine oil. Grace sat at the table drawing again, this time. A group of bikers holding hands with a little girl. She hummed while coloring, the tune light and pure. Lily stood in the kitchen, watching her, eyes glistening. She hasn't been this calm in months. Eva handed her a mug of tea. Sometimes all a heart needs is proof that kindness isn't gone. Mason overheard, glancing up from fixing a dented helmet. He said nothing, but the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. After dinner, when everyone else had gone to bed, Mason sat outside on the porch. The sky was dark, the air crisp. Lily joined him quietly, wrapping her blanket tighter. She asked if you're her hero, Lily said. What should I tell her? Mason looked down, turning the glove Grace had held earlier between his fingers. Tell her I'm just someone who showed up at the right time. Lily studied him. Do you always carry other people's storms like this? He smiled faintly. Only the ones that remind me of my own. There was a long silence, broken only by the chirp of crickets and the soft creak of the porch swing. Lily finally whispered, I don't know how to thank you. You already did, he said, nodding toward the window where Grace's laughter echoed faintly. You're both still here. That's thanks enough, if you believe love still wins. Comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. As the night deepened, Mason's eyes drifted toward the horizon, a habit he couldn't break. Somewhere out there, more storms were brewing. More people were breaking quietly behind closed doors. He knew he couldn't stop it all, but maybe he could still make a dent. Inside, Lily tucked Grace into bed, brushing soot-stained hair from her forehead. Grace mumbled in her sleep, Don't let the angels leave. Lily's voice cracked as she whispered back, Not this time. Through the window, she saw Mason standing near his bike, his silhouette framed by moonlight. For the first time since the night everything fell apart, she felt something like peace. He looked up as if sensing her gaze and gave a small nod, silent, steady, the kind that said, You're safe now. The engines rested for tonight, but both of them knew the road wasn't done telling their story yet. Asterisk morning broke quietly, the kind of pale gold that makes even scars look softer. The smell of coffee drifted through Mason's kitchen. mixing with the sound of Grace's giggles as she tried to feed a piece of toast to the family dog. Lily leaned against the counter, eyes tired but alive. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like a stranger in her home. Mason entered, already dressed in his worn leather jacket, helmet under his arm. "Got a few errands to run," he said, avoiding Lily's gaze. She folded her arms. "Errands are another rescue?" His faint smile didn't deny it. "Sometimes they're the same thing." Ava, carrying a tray of steaming mugs, chimed in before Lily could argue. "He can't help it, honey. The road's his confession booth." Lily looked at Mason for a long second, then sighed. "At least come back in one piece." He nodded once, that silent promise that had become his language. Then he bent down to Grace's level. "Keep your mom safe while I'm gone, okay?" Grace grinned, saluting with sticky fingers. "Yes, Captain Angel." He chuckled and headed for the door, the morning sun catching the faint shimmer of burn scars across his arm. Quiet reminders of what kindness costs. Hours later, the garage buzzed with the low hum of engines and laughter. Caleb tossed Mason a wrench. "You really think we're making a difference?" Mason caught it midair. "We don't have to fix the world," he said. "Just prove it's still worth saving." Before Caleb could respond, a phone rang. Mason picked it up. Ava's number. Her voice trembled on the other end. "Mason, you need to come back. Now." His stomach dropped. "What happened?" "It's Lily. There's someone outside the house. I think it's him, the man from before." The world tilted. Mason didn't think. He moved. The others followed without a word, tires screeching as they tore down the highway. Wind whipped against his face, each second stretching like eternity. At the house, Lily stood in front of the porch, shielding Grace behind her. The man, disheveled, furious, drunk, stumbled toward them. "You think you can hide from me?" He slurred, fists clenched. "You think those bikers scare me?" Lily's voice trembled but didn't break. "You don't get to touch us ever again." Grace clung to her mother's leg, eyes wide with fear. "Mama!" Then the roar came, engines filling the air like thunder rolling across heaven. The Iron Mercy arrived as one, black and silver shapes cutting through sunlight and dust. Mason dismounted first, his steps slow, deliberate. The man sneered. "You again." Mason's voice was calm to calm. "You had your chance to walk away. You think you're some hero?" The man spat. "You're just another loser hiding behind a bike." Mason didn't raise his voice, didn't even move closer. "Maybe, but I know what fear smells like. And it's not coming from me." The man swung, sloppy, desperate. Mason sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and twisted just enough to send him stumbling backward. "You're done," he said quietly. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Ava must have called. By the time the cops arrived, the man was on his knees, head hanging low. Mason stepped back, letting the officers take him. No more threats, no more terror. Grace ran to Mason, tears spilling as she wrapped her arms around his waist. "You came back again." He crouched, ruffling her hair gently. "Told you, kid. The angels don't quit." Lily stood frozen, tears falling freely now. "How do you do it?" she whispered. "How do you keep showing up for people like us?" Mason looked at her, the lines of exhaustion and compassion tangled across his face. "Because someone once didn't show up for me," he said softly. "And I promised I'd never let that happen to anyone else." Lily's throat tightened. "You kept your promise." He smiled faintly. "So did you. You stood your ground." The officers led the man away, his voice fading into silence. For the first time, Lily didn't look over her shoulder. She exhaled a breath she'd been holding for years. "If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind." One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Later that night, the house was quiet again. Grace slept peacefully in her new room, her teddy bear patched and clean. Lily sat on the porch steps, watching the stars blink into view. Mason stood beside his bike, ready to ride once more. She turned to him, voice barely above a whisper. "So this is goodbye." He looked at her for a long moment. "No, this is peace. Will we see you again?" He smiled gently. "If you ever hear the sound of engines in the rain." "Maybe," she nodded, tears tracing silent gratitude down her cheeks. "Thank you, Mason, for everything." He put on his helmet, the faint rumble of his bike filling the air. "You don't have to thank me. Just live brave. That's all I ever wanted." As he rode away into the night, Lily whispered into the wind, "We'll be okay." And for the first time, she believed it. The road swallowed the echo of the engines, leaving behind nothing but hope. A reminder that sometimes the loudest angels don't fall from heaven. They ride out of the storm. ***. Weeks passed, and the quiet began to feel natural again. The scent of ash no longer clung to the air, replaced instead by the sweetness of blooming jasmine that grew along the fences. Lily started working full-time at the bakery, her laughter becoming part of the morning rhythm. Grace walked to school with her backpack bouncing behind her, waving at every motorcycle that passed by, just in case one of them was him. Every night, before bed, Grace prayed the same words softly under her blanket: "Keep the angels safe, especially Captain Mason." Sometimes Lily would linger by the window, listening to the hum of distant engines. It had been weeks since she'd seen the Iron Mercy, yet she felt them everywhere, in the quiet safety of her days, in the way Grace no longer woke screaming, in the way her hands no longer trembled when she turned the key to her door. Far beyond the city, on a winding mountain road, Mason and the crew stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the valley. The sky stretched wide and golden, clouds glowing like fire on water. Caleb broke the silence first. "Feels different, doesn't it? Like the air's lighter." Mason leaned on his handlebars, watching the sun sink low. "That's what happens when you let go of what's chasing you," Caleb smirked. "Or when you finally help someone who reminds you who you were." Mason chuckled. "Maybe both." He reached into his jacket and pulled out the small letter Lily had written, edges now worn soft from being unfolded too many times. "You gave a child her belief back. You gave a mother courage she'd forgotten she had." He read the line quietly, letting it settle deep in his chest. Back in town, Grace's class had a Heroes Day. Each student was asked to bring a photo or drawing of someone who inspired them. Grace walked to the front of the classroom clutching her paper. "This is my hero," she said proudly, showing a drawing of a man on a motorcycle with angel wings on his back. "He saved me and my mama when nobody else came. He doesn't have superpowers, but he's brave and kind." Her teacher smiled, eyes softening. "That's beautiful, Grace. What's his name?" Grace shook her head. "I don't know his real name, but I call him Captain Angel." The class clapped, and for the first time, Grace didn't look shy. She looked strong. Lily, standing at the back of the classroom for Parents' Day, had to blink back tears. Afterward, when Grace ran up to her, she said, "Mama, I think the angels can hear us when we talk about them." Lily hugged her tightly. "I think you're right, sweetheart." Miles away, as Mason rode through the open road, the wind carried faint laughter, or maybe it was memory, whispering through his helmet. Ava's voice came through the radio. "We heading home?" "Yeah," he replied, smiling. "Feels like everyone finally is." The sun dipped behind the hills, painting everything in the soft glow of closure. The road stretched endlessly, but for the first time in years, it didn't feel like running. It felt like arriving. When they stopped for fuel, Mason noticed a small donation box on the counter. The hand-drawn label read, "Shelter for Abused Families. Help us build hope." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded $100 bill, and slipped it in quietly. The cashier looked up, surprised. "That's a lot, man." Mason smiled faintly. "Not enough." A few days later, a letter arrived at the bakery. No return address, only a simple emblem stamped in ink. A small set of wings over a motorcycle wheel. Inside, a single sentence in neat handwriting, "Keep living brave." Lily read it over and over, her heart swelling with warmth and ache all at once. She placed it on the wall beside Grace's drawing of the loud angels, the ink catching the light like a quiet promise. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Grace pointed upward. "Mama, look. Do you think that one's his star?" Lily smiled. Maybe it's the one that never goes out." Grace leaned against her shoulder, yawning. "Do you think we'll ever see him again?" Lily hesitated, then kissed the top of her daughter's head. "I think we already do, every time we see someone being kind when they don't have to be." The next morning, a group of bikers rode through the city before dawn. The streets were still quiet, the world half asleep. Mason led the way, the horizon glowing with new light. For once, there were no emergencies, no cries for help, just the hum of engines and the steady rhythm of peace. As he rode past the bakery, he slowed down for a heartbeat. Through the glass, he saw Lily and Grace setting up trays of bread, sunlight spilling across their smiles. He didn't stop. He didn't need to. Some stories don't need words to finish. They just need silence, gratitude, and a little bit of road left to travel. And as the engines faded into the distance, the city woke to the quiet truth that heroes don't always stay. Sometimes they just make sure you can stand again before they disappear back into the wind. The road stretched on, carrying Mason and his brothers toward another sunrise, another chance to do good quietly. No headlines, no glory, just the steady belief that somewhere, someone's life might feel lighter because they rode this way. And far behind them, in a small house now filled with laughter, a little girl whispered her prayer once more, "Keep the angels safe." The wind outside seemed to answer, soft, low, and eternal, moral. Real heroes aren't the ones who arrive with perfection. They're the ones who show up anyway when the world goes silent. Because sometimes, saving someone's faith and goodness is the greatest rescue of all.